Okay. Good morning, everybody. We are back with the different podcast. My name is Rita, and my co-host is Emma.
Yes, good morning to the different podcast listeners. I'm
Yeah,
Emma, and I hope you're all right.
yeah. We hope you're good. Today's episode is a little bit different. We are going to talk about addiction and late diagnosed neurodivergent women. And the reason for this is because addiction is such a big part of neurodiversity, but no one really speaks about it. And some fun facts, because we love fun facts. We're academics, we love these sort of things. But did you know that autistic individuals are 2 to 4 times more likely to develop substance disorders than neurotypical people?
I did not know that.
And what makes it worse is for those with co-occurring ADHD, the risk skyrockets even higher.
Yep. I didn't know that either.
Why it's fascinating is because they're actually initially less likely to experiment with substances, but when they do, they're significantly more likely to develop problematic use patterns.
Wow.
So overall, because of how we are, we avoid them because we find out all the facts and all that things. But when we do use them, we find it very hard to use it in a stable manner. Not that anybody should use drugs anyway, but we're not stigmatizing because life doesn't work that way. And what's interesting is that because people mask a lot, masking in women especially is directly linked to higher rates of self-medication with alcohol and cannabis. And
Mm.
this was a study that was carried out in 2024. We can post the link to the study, and that does end up making a lot of sense because women are expected to be more social and fit in these cliques and stuff. So what you end up having is a lot of women who have been maybe taking a little happy pill, a little thing here to calm down so that they can be more social, more outgoing, more happy and things like that. So things like wine o'clock, you see mums happily drinking wine, you see all these events, paint and sip, all that kind of thing. Alcohol is promoted to get women to relax. But as a neurodivergent woman, the risks of that are a lot harder for you because you might not actually know how much is too much. So you're just drinking to drown out that I'm feeling nervous feeling. And then before you know it, you're drunk and you're like, oh, but my emotions were suppressed. That I didn't feel so bad. We can get over a hangover. And next thing you know, let's go again. And before you know, it's a habit that's carried on and happens every single time. So you need to go outside, I need a drink. You need to do this, I need a drink. All those kind of things. And tobacco, funnily enough, tobacco helps our brains. Tobacco has been linked to helping brains stay calm. So that's why you find a lot of neurodivergent people in general are smokers because it helps. The action of smoking does help in terms of it's a stimulant tool and
Yeah.
the little dopamine rush you get from it. So those were some interesting facts that I just wanted to talk about. Emma, do you have anything to add to that?
There's a huge link between undiagnosed ADHD and addiction. And
Yeah.
I'd just like to point out that this is because there's an overlap between ADHD and addiction within the brain and the brain processes. And it's basically is a problem with the regulation of dopamine and norepinephrine, which is what you've just said. They're both neurotransmitters. I'm just looking down because I'm reading it, or I'm not reading it word for word, but I'm just looking at it. And there's two particular parts of the brain that are interlinked with ADHD and with addiction. And if you're not
Oh, okay.
medicated for ADHD, yeah, or even if you're undiagnosed, like I was back then, we'll talk about that in a minute though, is it basically the parts of the brain are my brain doesn't want to work this morning. The dopamine and the norepinephrine neurotransmitters can't get the messages through your brain quick enough. So their prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of your brain, which is the bit that controls your emotions, controls your executive functioning, like decision making or impulse control, or just your emotions and daily life, is massively affected. And then the other bit is the basal ganglia. I hope I pronounced that right because I'm like tongue tied. But This part of your brain is crucial for habit formation and motor control. So, a
Okay.
key part of the basal ganglia is the brain's main reward center. So, substances, any substance, whether it's nicotine, alcohol, drugs, even a non substance addiction, when we're talking about food or sex or shopping or anything like that, these are both also very connected with addiction. So the combined effect of a dopamine deficient brain and an impaired prefrontal cortex creates a storm where the person is more susceptible to addiction. And this is because of the reward pathway in the brain as well. So reward pathway and in ADHD and in addiction are both the same things. And this means that even after people get clean, sadly, without continued support, there is the likelihood that they may relapse. And this is because it's nothing to do with willpower. It's actually to do with the biological processes in neurotransmitters and chemicals.
You still need that.
In your brain. So it's actually a biological thing. So, I do know a lot of people that have kind of got clean and relapsed again, and they feel full of shame. And there should be no shame in that, because actually you're sadly, for reasons completely and utterly out of your control. There's no control in that. It's the biological makeup of your brain. And that doesn't mean to say that you are going to relapse. It's just a possibility.
That you And I think that kind of highlights that traditional recovery programs aren't really made for people under spectrum, because traditional is that you have the 12 steps, the cold turkey and everything, but that doesn't take into account the long-term effects. They can't just say, oh, don't go near it. We still need something. So I don't know if it's to introduce a new sort of habit or something that still gives us those rewards but aren't so self-destructive.
So having ADHD, whether you're diagnosed or undiagnosed, means that you have a interest-based nervous system, an interest-based brain, and this is because of neurotransmitters that are neurodevelopmental disorder. I don't mind the word disorder, but a lot of people don't. And it's because the parts of the brain that need to connect can't connect, or they connect slower. So we kind of chase that reward pathway, the reward chemicals which is the dopamine, I think. So if you've got ADHD, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed, your the systems in your brain are already sensitive to this reward deficit. And that can cause, oh my God, my brain. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna take a breath, because I won't edit this bit out anyway either, because I think we need to just, we are very.
What Emma was trying to say is that having ADHD does leave you susceptible to addictive behaviors.
Yes.
Because your brain requires a certain amount of zinc, as I like to call it. So this goes into a lot of things, leaving things to last minute, because that pressure gives you the zinc and that happiness, that dopamine hit. Maybe always jumping on the last step or something. You do these little things because they give you that feeling of happy. It's like, oh, I've done it now. But anything that doesn't give you that feeling, you tend to avoid most of the time. And unfortunately, when you get into substances that are a little bit stronger and they can alter how we feel, you use them more and more. But the problem is, the more you use them, the less reward you also get from them, that initial feeling. So then you find yourself having to use more and more and more to still get that initial hit, but you're not getting it. And a really interesting part of this is also genetic disposition, because some people have parents who have struggled with addiction and are neurodivergent, but older generations didn't really understand neurodivergence. So you have the uncle who might always have a drink at a certain time every single day on purpose, or the mother who's always taking a certain tablet at a certain time every single day on purpose, and they get really mad if they can't take it, because that's that hit, and that is a form of addiction as well, but they're not aware of. And you have all these predispositions and you're trying to beat all these things. It's really very hard. And what's really interesting, there's a There's somebody that has a blog that I was reading. Um, and Chelsea Flood, she has a personal account, and she said alcohol masked my autism so well nobody noticed until I got sober. And that's something that I kind of relate to because when I was younger, I could drink, I could go out, I was having the time of my life, and then I had a baby. I can't drink anymore when you have a baby. My gosh, the having a baby and the autism hit me, but I didn't know that's what it was, so I just shut down, all these things. And there's no help, there's no understanding that this is why it's happening because you have a lot of anxiety, but you're going out with your friends, you get drunk, and I'm like, I'm fine, we can do this. We're making the craziest lethal cocktails in the morning before we go out during the day. And there's such a drinking culture in this country as well. Like, you go to Weatherspoons in the morning, and someone's like, well, it's 12 p.m. somewhere, let's get a round of drinks in. It's nothing. Nobody sees it as a hard thing. But then when you're really left without being able to do those things, like, or even smoking, because smoking was fun, and it's not like I particularly enjoyed smoking, but I just like the action, and it gave me a little stimmy thing to do. Because sometimes, I'll be very honest, I didn't like the full cigarette. So most of the time, I used to break it down into three because a whole cigarette was too much for my brain, and it will hurt my brain. It's like when you get a brain freeze, and it just hurts so much. But I just needed that initial little thing. Going cold turkey was one of the hardest things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, now I just drink a million cups of tea, so that's why you always see me with a huge cup of tea because I'm like, I still need. It's the action. It's not really the thing, you know.
And you always see me with a vape. And I
Yeah,
don't think I've vaped on camera yet with us because I've tried to not vape. But the reality of it is I do vape and I know it's not
yeah.
smoking, but it's still something that
It's
now,
still something. Yeah,
yeah, calms me down.
I've
Yeah.
avoided those because I was like, if I get one, I'm gonna end up having it all the time. So I'm like, I've literally just avoided them. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I can't do this. But yeah, it's not an easy thing. Are there any times that you were actively masking, but you would like use something on purpose to like just cover how you were feeling? So you
Yeah.
go,
Yeah, so
right,
so I got clean from drugs in 2007, and I stayed clean, like total abstinence, by going to 12-step meetings. And then after in um, I started drinking. I can't remember when I started drinking alcohol again, but I started drinking in the early around 2010, 2012, or maybe a bit, I don't know, anyways. And then I got sober again in 2019, um, after I can tell you, I've got so many funny stories, but they're probably not funny to like everybody. So, yeah, so I've kind of got quite a lot of experience when it comes to addiction. And yes, like most of the time when I was younger, there'd be something, whether it was, alcohol, whether it was drugs, whether it was like anything, like literally anything and everything. Back when I was a teenager, it was the 90s. So it was the 90s rave scene.
yeah, never.
Oh, yeah. I try not to kind of sensationalize it because obviously,
Like, it was the thing then. It was like the cool thing, and everyone's
yeah,
doing. And if you're a cool kid, it's no big deal. Like, I mean, people are sitting in cafes inside libraries and smoking inside buses and stuff. It wasn't seen as a big don't do thing. So
yeah, yeah. So it was the 90s. There was lots of raving. There was lots of nightclubs. There was illegal raves in Thetford Forest. It
yeah,
was
the
just
forest raves.
crazy. Yeah, it was just crazy, crazy times. Yeah, a lot of fun. A lot of fun was had. But like you, I got pregnant with my daughter when I was 23, and then I was 24 when I had her. And I'd love to tell you that I stayed clean and sorted my life out at that moment, but that's not really my truth. But I think if I go back to kind of being a teenager, I grew up in a narcissistic environment. So I wasn't really able to kind of have my needs met when I was a child. And there was a lot of emotional and verbal abuse, and I was always put down and blamed for everything. And I think I got to senior school, high school, whichever one you want to call it. And I think I just began to rebel. And then I was bullied at school as well. So there was just all this kind of toxic trauma around me 24. And there just seemed to be no kind of safety anywhere. And, I was introduced to Tipex thinner in the back of a physics class. You can't buy it now, I don't think. The little bottles of Tipex, the good
Yeah.
stuff. I don't think you can
And then
even
you get
buy the little. Yeah,
yeah,
and inhaling that in, and it was just like, and then
I
getting sent
remember
out of the
that.
class because physics teacher's forehead used to grow like that, and I just end up laughing and get sent out of the class, and then I had boobs back then. And my friends used to send me into the newsagents to buy 10 B&H, which was P back in
They
them
used to be
days.
so cheap, didn't
Yeah,
they?
yeah,
Oh my gosh, they used to be so cheap. We used to be
yeah,
out by the fields,
yeah.
and they
And
were
then
so
there was,
cheap to get. Yeah.
yeah, you could, I mean, a packet of 20 now is about 20 quid, isn't it? So it's definitely a habit that you can't keep up unless you
It's
work.
not. It's not. I'm looking at it like,
Yeah.
I can't afford this anymore.
And I didn't even really like smoking, but I did it because I desperately wanted to fit in.
It was easier to fit in with those kids than the rest of the other kids because
Yeah.
they were all weird in their own way anyway, and they just used to be really relaxed and stuff. And it's just
Yeah,
that they were always wearing black, and they listened to a lot of rock music, which wasn't a bad thing, but you know, it was a lot easier to fit in with
yeah,
them, with the
yeah.
alternative kids than the normal kids.
Yeah. So, and now after what we've just talked about nicotine and dopamine and stuff and the reward pathways in the brain, obviously back then I had undiagnosed ADHD, so I started smoking, and I didn't smoke every day to start with. It became a daily habit after a while. So yeah, and then weed, ecstasy, cocaine, acid. That was one of the funniest times I ever had, was that acid. But I don't really want to sensationalize like the 90s.
Really in a wild way. I was like,
Yeah, you do want
I
me
had
to
the
tell you
limit.
the story.
I had the limit that I was scared of going fast because I was like, yeah, I can't do this. I can't do this because if I end up in hospital, the drama in the hospital. I think I was more scared of the amount of trouble I'll get from home than
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I was quite, I was Larry, as my mum would say. Mother would say Larry. I was very rebellious, let's say. Yeah, I was a pain in the ass. And I think it's just like, if you think about it in psychological terms, like our primary caregivers, attention from them, and whether it's good or bad attention from them
Then
is,
so you repeat the behavior that gets you attention.
yeah,
Doesn't matter because you're like, okay, at least they're paying attention to me and
yeah,
talking to me and this, that, that, that.
yeah,
Yeah, I understand that one. I definitely understand that one. I used to come home really, really late. And it's not like I was doing anything else. I used to sit in town with my mates, so I'll go spend hours in a different library than the one I said I was going to. But I knew that that would actually get me attention. I mean, I get shouted at and everything, but
yeah, just shrug my, yeah,
something, still something. And that's really interesting to know. I mean, and again, helping you fit, like, if fix something like you could fit in more. Because so with me, I'm talking, I'll make my jokes and let everyone gets, and everyone looks at me like I'm a weirdo. I've said something really weird or crazy. But when I'm a little tipsy and I'm laughing, and then everyone's like, ha ha ha, they get it. I can fit in. I don't have to be
yeah,
so
well,
not I'm not the weird, awkward girl in the corner that nobody wants to talk to. And when you're growing up as a teenager and looks are coming into it, and you don't feel like you're the prettiest person either, so you're trying to be the funniest or something, or and you just needed a way to fit in. So hard. It's so hard.
sarcasm for me works really well.
Yeah.
It's
And we had a lot of alcohol in our house because we used to throw a lot of parties and stuff, and everyone's drinking and pretending they don't drink. I might get heat for this, but I don't really care. Everyone was drinking and pretending they don't drink. So we always had like mixers and a lot of spirits in our house as well. And I'm just looking like this. So sometimes I used to actually sell those bottles to my friends at school. but it was there. It was all around and nobody's really speaking about it or being careful about it. And I mean, talking of addiction and stuff, even my mum struggled with alcohol. God bless her soul. I think as I'm getting older, I'm just realizing that she was also neurodivergent. And I think having a second kid kind of broke her brain in a bit because there's like a 10-year gap between me and my elder sister. And she was very, very sad because love wasn't exactly the kindest to her. And so in Sierra Leone, they used to make these little gin packets. So you get them in little gin packets, and she used to have those all the time and things like that. And when she got old and her kidneys just gave out and stuff, and we knew it was kind of because of that, because the addiction, you
Mm.
had to keep having those things, and even some more of my older family members have always had a lot of kidney problems and liver problems and things like that. And it's the alcohol. They'll tell you it's not the alcohol because they go to church and they're good people and da, 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 but always having a little drink, always having a little drink. And it's not like one glass of wine is you're looking at the bottle for ages to see the strongest percentage, mixing the spirits and everything. The bottles are going down and being replaced consistently like that. But because they were very social, always in parties, so they're always buying a lot of alcohol for these parties. They're coming home, so nobody really sees the problem
Yeah,
that's there. You know,
yeah. Makes sense.
yeah, it's
I
really
know
quite.
it is sad if you think about it. My mum was never a big drinker. I think maybe her addiction was bullying me off every
That could
Sunday.
have been. I mean, if it gave her the situation, that sounds so bad to think about. Oh my gosh. But
Laughing, but
yeah,
I'm not. It's not funny, but I have to laugh about it
you
now.
have to laugh because
Yeah,
laughing is easier than breaking down into crying and the rage. Laughing keeps the
yeah.
rage away.
He's always been a drinker, but he doesn't go to the pub every day. And so, he used to drink a lot more when he was younger. But I think, back in 70s and 80s, that was the done thing.
Yeah.
It was just like you'd go to work every day, you go to the pub to chill out, have a chat with your friends, and
Have
then
a
go
cup of
home for your tea. Yeah,
and
and
you have a lot of sherry with your tea as well.
yeah,
Just always
yeah,
got a little beer and stuff. That's one thing. It's
yeah.
so
It's just
normalized and
Yeah, it's
normal.
alcohol. It's
Yeah.
socially acceptable, isn't it? And it's like, how many people every year die from alcohol abuse? I don't know the
It's a huge.
percentages or the numbers, but it's a lot,
It's a lot.
thousands and thousands. But it's like, you can look back and see things in your parents. And my mum has got two children with ADHD. So and we've both got different dads. So it's highly likely that she's neurodivergent as well, even though she was diagnosed with bipolar, which we now know is something that a lot of psychiatrists diagnose in women, when in fact she probably has ADHD. And I can have a bit of sympathy sometimes towards her because I know what it's like to live as an undiagnosed ADHD woman. It's hard work. It takes a lot of hard work and courage and stuff just to kind of do a daily life and try and mask and fit in with the societal norms. Norms. I don't know why I said it like that, but I'm just with the norms of the neurodivergent in a neurotypical way.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard work. It is hard work, and she was very erratic sometimes, and they put her on some really strong mental health medication, and I'm not sure if she ever really needed it. And I can feel, sympathy to her for that. And I've thought a lot about my childhood and how, the reason why I took or started taking the substances when I was a teenager was because I wanted to escape the world and everything around me at school or at work or, at home. And literally, I wasn't kind of taking drugs and drinking alcohol in my early teens every day, but it was almost like an instantaneous thing. Like I got that buzz, and it was an escapism back then. And then it like kind of yeah. So it started with escaping from the trauma, from the feelings, from the bullies, from my mother, from the chaos in my life. But then the 90s were fun, and I'm not going to lie and say they weren't fun because they were fun. And there was a lot of ecstasy, and there was a lot of clubbing, and there was a lot of double, triple, or quadruple dropping because you didn't think they're working. and then all of a sudden you come up on 3 or 4 pills at the same time and you're absolutely wankered. I just said a naughty word then. And you're like, "Oh," it's just insane. I could tell you some really funny stories about them back then, but I just don't. I'm not saying that I won't tell you, it's just that I don't want to sensationalize it, because back then it was an escapism, but then it turned into something that I just did. But then after I had my daughter, like, you mentioned about your having your son, and with ADHD in women, any kind of hormonal change or hormonal fluctuation throughout your whole life, like spikes, your ADHD symptoms. So that would be puberty, before your period every month, postnatal, so after you've had a baby, and then obviously perimenopause and menopause. And every time your estrogen drops and the progesterone increases, the parts of your brain on the ADHD symptoms spike. And so I think I can kind of, after I had Ellie, I wasn't like, there was no real hard drugs for a while. But there was, I used to smoke a bit of solid weed, not weed. Weed used to make me feel really paranoid, and so did cocaine, but it didn't stop me from taking them. That's crazy when I say that out loud. But it's like, there was solid, the little brown stuff that you used to get hot rocks and everything with, and I used to smoke a bong, and and then it kind of, as she got older, I never did it. I'd just like to point out, I never, always when she was
When that
asleep, it was never in the same room as her. There was never anything that she could get hold of, which she couldn't as a baby. So I was very, very careful. She used to go and stay with my mum. My mum used to have her over the weekends sometimes, and then I'd go out partying then. But I think after a while, I got to 25, 26, and I'd like to tell you that I kind of just settled down and grew up a little bit. And I looked after my daughter the best I could. And considering my childhood, I think I did a very decent job of doing it. But I found myself,
overwhelmed,
yeah, just the responsibility, the day to day life, having to kind of just manage day to day, get up, get
especially
off
when
to
they get to
school.
that 3 to 4 age kind of thing.
Yeah.
Does that but it's really hard. That gap between, like, age 3 and age 7 is it's really hard. Things, the learning, the doing everything, the getting into things, the jumping it is like you're still going crazy. Because when they're a baby, it's like, "Oh, they're a baby," but they sleep most of the time. You don't have to worry about them as much.
Yeah.
It is quite hard, and they're starting school, and you're trying to look like the best parent in school, be involved in all the little things. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And you have
Yeah.
to find out who you are as well, because you've gone through being a kid, escaping, then you became a mum just as your 20s started and you were trying to figure out who you are. Then you got thrown into being a mum, and then all of a sudden, like, who am I actually? What do I like? What is my
Yeah.
voice? And you're
Yeah.
trying to, and you have that really critical inner voice that's been with you all your life, and you're trying to, like, silence that, but it's there, it's live and direct. It's a really tough
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself, and I know for both of us, our kids are really clever, and they're very inquisitive, and they like to kind of, they want to know everything about certain things. I think, once my daughter went to school, I did start taking amphetamines every day. And as we know, amphetamines is a stimulant. And, with undiagnosed ADHD, the amphetamines was every day, or when I could afford every day. But it quickly kind of snowballed into such a huge dependency and addiction. And I was just always chasing, like getting the money or chasing the drug dealer, or, and I look back on that, and I used to look back on it and feel such a huge amount of shame for doing that, and for not being able to stop, and not being able to kind of look after my daughter or look after myself. And I did look after her, but not kind of, the expectations I think were too high on myself. And my mum was was a really critical grandmother, and she undermined me at any given time. So I had to cope with that. And I think,
That for actually helping you, and raising kids is a very much a community as opposed to an individual thing, but the community needs to be on the same page and actually loving and helpful and graceful, you know.
she wasn't
So that
like,
makes it even harder.
yeah. I mean, I was really grateful to her and my stepdad, my dad at the time, because they did used to look after her, like, quite a lot. But I think now looking back
Your
on that,
mental health, so you traded your mental health a lot for that, you know?
yeah, but it kind of almost had the opposite effect. Like, yes, she used to look after her and babysit a lot, but, like, Ellie would be given everything and anything while she was there, and obviously I wasn't working at the time, so Ellie used to ask me for things. I've just said my daughter's name. My daughter used to ask me for things, and I'd be like, "I'm sorry, but we've got no money." And then she'd be like, and then she'd go and sulk. This is hilarious. Go and sulk somewhere, and then she'd come back, hand on her hip, and she'd be like, "Can I use the phone, please?" We only had a landline
Yeah.
at the time, and I was like, "Who do you want to ring?" And she was like, "Grandma," because she says that she'll never say no, and she'll get me everything that I want. And I just laughed at her, and I said, "No, you're not using the phone."
I'm disconnecting the phone. I don't think. I get it. Cause like, oh no, yeah, that's not.
So yeah, it was one of them things where I, at the time, probably looked at it through rose-tinted glasses and thought, "Yeah, my mum and my stepdad are just trying to do a nice thing," but I don't think my mum was. My mum wanted to gain control of my child, and that's what she wanted to do, and it just caused so many dramas that it was just unnecessary, and I could talk about this for, like, ever, but, yeah, it just the undermining, I think, like, after my childhood and after the way I'd always been treated, like I was just a second-class citizen in the house and an inconvenience. I think, when I had my daughter, I moved even further down the line of importance. And I think there was possibly an element of jealousy for me as well, because I think I desperately still wanted my mum to kind of accept me and love me or like me at least. I don't think
Didn't happen.
she's never gonna. And I think I probably was jealous because her and my daughter got on really well and they still are really close and they have a very different relationship.
Well,
Yeah, and it's only been in the last maybe 6 or 7 years that my daughter can actually understand the concept of the different relationship between me and my mum and her and my mum, and then me and my daughter. And it's only with kind of age and wisdom that you can understand that. But so yeah,
they grow up eventually and they see the truth. They start to see the truth for what it is and
yeah,
how it is. You know, it's very different. It's a little bit sad sometimes because you're harboring so much pain, and at the same time, you want the little person to actually be able to develop their own good relationship. And I'm sure if at any point you really felt like your mum was a danger to your daughter, you would have made sure they went around together. So she could be good to your daughter and not necessarily good to you. And that always hurts a lot because you're like, what principle do I stand on? You know, do I take this grandparent away from my child who isn't good to me at all, but or do I let my child develop a good relationship with this grandparent and know that they're safe and loved? But I think it's that knowing that they're safe and loved and
yeah,
not them not belittling you in front of your child that makes the difference.
yeah.
Yeah.
And she did do that a lot, and I'm very reactive. I lose my rag in 0.00000,
Because she
and
knows how to do it to you. That if you're in another place and someone does it, you can kind of laugh it off like, yeah, you don't know me, so I'm just gonna allow you. But when somebody knows you, you spend so much time with them, you know
yeah.
that they're just being, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So, I did used to fly off the handle quite a lot, but I stopped doing that about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe a bit longer. I just decided that I was
do it
just
now.
gonna try and keep my temper intact, and sadly, the only way that I've been able to keep up with that is not to have any contact with the mother or the brother because there's just too much toxic trauma for all of us, and sadly, that's the only option for me for my sanity, for my safety, for my mental health, for my physical health. But yeah, so
Go with no contact for no reason. The parents who are decent parents actually still have contact with their children, irrespective of what happened, even through families that have been through addiction or anything worse. If you're a good parent, it shows in your relationship with your child at a later age. But
yeah,
when your child really says, I want nothing to do with you, at some point in that timeline, you did something so bad and you never tried to fix it either. Because it's one thing to say, when you're younger, okay, you're a first time parent, da 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 da. We can forgive some of those things, but it's when we're both turning to adults and you have this chance to actually be a decent person. and you don't do it. And we're less forgiving because as we become parents as well, we can see how these relationships form. And there are things that we will never do to our children because we have so much love for them. And we're looking at you like, we're both grown up. So how can you still be this person?
It's
And
crazy, isn't it?
yeah, but peace of mind is not overrated. Peace of mind. I will always support anybody who's like, I want no contact because my peace of mind was more important. Yes, it is because you can't come. I would say this thing is a very African phrase, but I can't come and kill myself, especially because of you and your negativity. My health is the most important thing. I can't sit here stressing because my parents did something that I didn't like. Is that male?
And I think I just came to a place of acceptance, as in, I just think that I've tried all of my life to get her to like me and treat me better
Yeah.
than she does. And it's just not ever going to work. She's never going to accept me. She's never going to like me. And I don't think necessarily that she doesn't love me. I just think she doesn't really like me. We just have got nothing in common. We don't really gel. We're very different people. And I think
I have to make that effort to learn who you are and your interests and things and get to know you. You.
yeah, yeah, and it is sad when I think about it, but it's not sad anymore because I think, subconsciously, I parented very differently to the way that she parented me, and I'm sure that you have done exactly the same, and it just shows the true strength of someone's character. You're breaking the trauma cycle by not even knowing it. Even when Ellie was younger, when she was a little girl and when she was at school and with the drugs and stuff, like I try not to feel shame about it anymore because I actually had undiagnosed ADHD. And it's like when I
Talking about that, like, bring up feelings of grief over the years, and have you, like, been able to reframe that in a way that you're not punishing yourself, so to speak?
yeah, I think it's taken a long time for me to not punish myself about that. But I think after I got diagnosed and then obviously I was put on medication and obviously realized it's a pharmaceutical amphetamine or methamphetamine they call it, not methamphetamine, it's something completely different, but it's a pharmaceutical amphetamine, isn't it? So methylphenidate, that's it. Sorry, methamphetamine. My God. Being put on that and then kind of learning, obviously, I'm obsessed with ADHD in women, but I think learning about the brain and the dopamine and the norepinephrine and the hormonal changes and just learning about the fact that I remember the psychiatrist who diagnosed me said to me, she asked me what type of drugs I used to take. Because it was weird. After I got clean in 2007, I actually felt worse and my mental health declined for such a long time. But I just kept thinking, right, I've just got to go to a meeting, I've got to get involved, I've got to, do all of the suggestions that the 12-step meeting people suggest. And at no point did I think in them early years that there might actually be something else going on inside me that was completely out of my control. And then there was the food, there was the shopping, there was sex, there was lots of things that addictive behaviors that I did that are just because I had undiagnosed ADHD
Yeah,
and I was
I
trying my
could
brain.
it was dived for me the bad time because shopping and then you gave us pay later and it's like, "Oh, I can buy this, I can buy this, I can buy this," it's just junk
Yeah, yeah,
in my
it's
house.
insane. But then obviously, as I've learnt more about ADHD and as I've learnt more about myself and I can join like so many different dots from the past, I don't feel ashamed anymore. I don't feel ashamed of my past. And actually, there's no shame in it because I actually had a medical condition. I had a medical posed ADHD thing that I didn't even know about, and my brain and the biological processes in the brain just wanted that dopamine fix and that reward, the good feeling in the brain that makes you feel like that's just that reward pathway. And so, no, I don't feel ashamed anymore. I don't think, I've made amends to my daughter since 2007. And I've completely and utterly changed my life. And then the more that I learn about ADHD in women, the more that I don't feel ashamed. There's nothing to be feel ashamed about. Like,
You know.
is what it is, and it was what it was.
Under recovery, I just wanted to ask because I know that a traditional program like encourages sharing and group social connection. Like, How did that work for you? Did you find it okay or did you find it hard? And also, in terms of like treatment centers, is there anything that you will want them to perhaps do differently, or what do you think will help a lot more for women, neurodivergent women in recovery?
I mean, the 12-step meetings and stuff were great back in the beginning, and I just threw myself into that and just, like, did as much as I could. I went to a meeting every day, and, I used to do a bit of service, as they call it, and I used to turn up and make the tea and stuff, and it just gave me a bit of a sense of purpose in my life because I had all this free time that I used to use, like getting money or drugs and stuff, that it just gave me a little bit of purpose. So, yeah, that was great in the beginning, but obviously the mental health got worse. And then eventually, after quite a few years, I did go and speak to my doctor and I was put on antidepressants. And that actually really helped. There are, sadly, in the UK at the moment, the only way you can get into a rehab is by paying or going through the local drug agencies, and I mean, they're great. Well, I actually used to work in one I got a job when I was 2 or 3 years clean. I used to work in the local, like, community drug, place, and they're great. They're absolutely brilliant. They do lots of support, they do group sessions, they do one-to-ones, they do lots and lots of stuff. But
I
I
love
think
you run programs that
Mhm.
actually up. And I really do hope that as a society we keep them because they are important. These third spaces are very important for people to be able to go to and meet and share without feeling too stigmatized all the time because sitting in your house can drive you mad.
You can actually do a lot of stuff online now as well. After COVID, although COVID was horrific for everyone in the world, there's a lot of stuff you can do online. You could get some counselling. But I think really, if you're undiagnosed or diagnosed, I think really talking to a medical professional around dual diagnosis is really important. And unfortunately for us women, there's not a lot of psychiatrists or medical professionals that can support us fully with with ADHD, autism, or any other neurodivergence necessarily, because we're still like
Yeah,
10
it's still
years
quite.
back. Yeah, it's
Yes,
quite
we
a
are.
niche.
I have a lot of hope. It's going on a lot more, and we're seeing a lot more women as well as men. A lot more of the younger generations getting into it and talking about it and being more
Yeah,
open, willingness to study more. And the thing about online as well, things being online, more people are willing to work together with people in different countries, sharing what they've learned, their research and stuff. So there is
yeah.
hope, and hopefully it does get a lot better because I think, again, a community focus can really help to change things a lot more. Most of these things we aren't really meant to do alone, even though some of us like to be alone for a certain amount of times. Just knowing you have that option to have other people does make
Yeah,
a
and
huge difference.
I would just, suggest to any neurodivergent woman is just find someone that you can talk to that gets it without you having to explain it. And I know that's difficult for some still, but there's thousands of us late diagnosed women in the country and millions in the world. And if our listeners want to talk about something, they can comment on Spotify, and we can have them as a
When
guest. Or
Apple buys
oh yeah, we
and
are on
when
Apple now as well. Yeah, yeah,
yay!
yeah. We get and YouTube. Yeah, we're getting there
Yeah,
slowly, very slowly.
yeah.
So, but I would just suggest that find someone that you're comfortable with to talk to, and just talk through things. Like, I've got you. I've got other friends that are neurodivergent. My partner, I can talk to him. He knows he doesn't have ADHD. He has autism and
I have a new
OCD.
because you really I do understand. It's having your own little special person that gets you just
Exactly. Yeah.
get
We've
all
got
that
each
extra
other.
care. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, yeah, and maybe, if there's a massive need for it, we could start a group where people could join. That's just an idea that's just come into my head. Ching, ching, ching. And so, yeah, that could be a possibility in the future. But yeah, if you're just struggling with addiction or ADHD, autism, or anything, literally anything, like, just try and find someone that you can talk to, even if they
Remember,
don't
there's
get it.
nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. It's the thing. Take up space. Be yourself. Be as strange or weird as people like to say, as you like to be. It's you. You're allowed to be. That is who you are. Embrace yourself wholly and truly. And one thing I want to point out in terms of addiction is that autistics, autistic and ADHD individuals do have better recovery outcomes
Yeah,
once they received appropriate neurodivergent informed care. So you
yeah,
just need, it's annoying because we don't like to reach out because for most part we've been rejected.
yeah.
But there are professional services, there are people who know how to do those things, and being able to just speak to someone, even if it's just for 1 hour every 2 weeks, makes a big
Yeah.
difference. So do reach out, find help, do allow yourself to be selfish and just take up the room you need to.
I think as well, like, it's just about getting inquisitive about yourself, learn about yourself,
Yeah,
try
do
and
all
find
the
out what,
research.
try and find out what your symptoms are, and then try and find some, just think about your symptoms in a positive way rather than a negative, because we're not deficit, we're not disordered. We just have things that we struggle with, and that can be
Yeah,
addiction, that can be emotional dysregulation,
secondary
rejection
disorder.
sensitivity disorder. Yeah, there's loads of things that we find challenging, and a lot of the time when my emotions are triggered, I don't even know it's coming. It's like, whoa, where did
No,
that
it's
come
not.
from? And since the perimenopause has started from me, it's just like, I just lose my rag quite quickly, and it's just like I don't even know it's coming. But thankfully, my partner is really understanding and is very
He has the
compassionate and
crippling
empathetic. Yeah, so the HRT does help. But yeah, you just for me personally, I've had to get inquisitive about my symptoms, research a lot of stuff, and just kind of find ways to kind of just reframe how I see myself from the negative into the positive. And that includes, my addictive past. I think the psychiatrist said to me, like, it's more likely that I had undiagnosed ADHD than it is that I was a drug addict. And I'm not saying that I don't do or don't have addiction in the past, but I think whilst I abused drugs when I was younger, when she said that, it enabled me to make peace with that because I didn't feel the shame anymore. I didn't
which you
feel like,
shouldn't.
exactly. So yeah, wow, this has been great. And I agree. Yeah. So yeah, we can talk about this again anyway. So yeah,
Thank you for joining us on this episode. We will dive into this a lot more because I feel like this was such a great episode, but maybe have some more people and talk about different ways that I can present in things like OCD and all of those other I forgot the words.
comorbidities. Yeah.
Comorbidities.
Yeah.
And yes, please listen, leave your comments. We will see you soon. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. It's been a great day. Goodbye.
Thank you guys. Take care, Rita.